Hello and welcome back to the Thriving with Chels podcast. Happy Monday if you're listening to this the day that it comes out. Fun fact, in case you missed it, new episodes drop every single Monday. So make sure you are following the podcast. Make sure you rate the podcast 5 stars because I have received so many incredible messages from you guys about the podcast. And I always say, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. Please rate the podcast 5 stars. So please rate it 5 stars, and also tap the little bell if you're on Spotify. That way you get a notification every Monday morning when the podcast episode drops. Honestly, Monday 6 a.m. I think is the best time for these episodes to drop because you can listen to them on your way to work to start the week. You can listen to them on your getting your steps in on a Monday. What a great way to start the week. So make sure, follow, rate 5 stars, and turn your little notification thing on, and then let me know when you've done all of those things. And again, all feedback on the podcast, I love to hear, and I'm so grateful for it. So welcome to today's episode 5. God, time flies when you're having fun. Now, I will just say I'm feeling a lot higher energy than I was in the last 2 episodes, and I also feel a lot less ugly, if I'm being honest. The last 2 episodes I came in, I try to record 2 episodes at a time. So the last 2 episodes I recorded on the same day, and I woke up this morning and I was like, ooh, they got their sleep last night, but they did not get their beauty sleep. I was feeling a little bit ugly, and that's just being honest. That's not being, what's the word? Superficial. That's just being honest. I felt really ugly. And then felt tired. I had the biggest bags under my eyes. My face was puffy, and I was like, God, bad day to be recording a podcast. Anyway, I came in, I recorded 2 episodes, and then literally as I got home from my last recording, I got my period. So today is a week later, which means I am feeling like my best self. I feel less puffy, I feel less ugly, and I'm really excited to be here. Obviously, I was excited to be here last week, but I'm obviously more excited today because I don't feel disgusting. And that, again, I'm just being honest. But today's episode is something that I feel like the whole drive here, I was just like, oh my God, I can't wait to get these words out of my mouth, and I cannot wait for you all to hear this because this is probably the thing that I'm the most passionate about and the thing that I feel like I have so much to share about. And that is how I stopped binge eating and how you can too. So I have the 10 things that helped me overcome binge eating, or for you, it might be overeating. It doesn't matter. These tips will help you with both. And I wanted to share them with you today. So I've got 10 things that will help you stop binge eating / overeating. And again, for anyone who hasn't listened to the first few episodes, especially episode 1 and 2, I really went into my journey, how I overcame overeating, how I struggled with severe binge eating for like 14 years. Be sure to listen to those because that's going to give you a lot of context. Like I said in those episodes, I've kind of been to the depths and hell and back with my relationship with food and binge eating, and I feel so happy and proud and confident to be able to sit here today and tell you what I did, tell you what worked for me, and what I think you can do too. So let me get my little handy dandy list up. Also, I'm playing a dangerous game today because I've got my hair down and it's kind of in my face, and I just put lip gloss on. So I fear there may be hair stuck to my lip gloss. And if there is, we're all just going to ignore it, okay? Perfect. So number 1 tip. These are in no particular order. But number 1 thing you need to start doing if you want to overcome binge eating. Now, also, here I go. God, I can never just get to a point, can I? I'm like, let me tell you a million things first. Do I recommend doing all 10 of these things at once? No. I would pick one thing at a time, focus on that thing, and then build from there. I think trying to do everything at once, it's going to feel like a bit much. So pick one thing at a time, but these are the things that over I want to say 18-month period really helped me overcome my binge eating. So the first thing is I stopped restricting. I stopped doing crazy fad diets. I stopped cutting out food groups entirely. I stopped having all of these really strict and extreme food rules. I stopped restricting. And this also looks like not cutting out certain foods because they are bad for me or they are junk food. No restriction. No foods were off limits, because something that you'll definitely notice a pattern in this episode: when you tell yourself you cannot have something or that something is bad for you, as a human being, you are naturally going to want those foods even more. So I stopped telling myself, okay, well, as of tomorrow, I'm not eating chocolate for the rest of the year. Or as of tomorrow, I'm not eating takeaway ever again. I'm never going to eat McDonald's again. Like, in what world am I not eating Macca's again? I could eat Macca's every day. I don't, but I could. And the moment I stopped telling myself I couldn't eat certain foods, or I had to follow really, really strict, extreme diets or fad diets or whatever it is, was such a game changer for me. Because in my personal experience and in my experience as a nutrition coach who has coached thousands of women, restriction almost always leads to overeating. And the more you restrict, the more you're going to be stuck in that cycle of binge, restrict, binge, restrict, binge, restrict. Because you restrict, you want the food so badly, and then you tell yourself you're not allowed to have them, and then you eventually give in, and then you binge, and then you feel so bad about the binge, and you're like, oh my God, now I feel so guilty, and why did I do that? And then you end up restricting, and then the restricting, and it's that cycle. So me stopping restricting was massive for me. It changed my relationship with food. It was probably like the first thing that really made a good positive change to my relationship with food. And I don't actually think a lot of people restrict purpose. I think a lot of people do it because they think that's what's required. So this is your reminder that to lose weight now, obviously overcoming overeating and binge eating is not the same conversation as losing weight. Unpopular opinion, I do think that you can improve your relationship with food and lose weight at the same time. A lot of people out there will tell you you cannot. I have my own personal experience. I have worked with so many women who have helped do the same thing. I think you can. However, you have to go about it in kind of like a specific way, which is something I help a lot of my clients do. But what was my point? I don't think people restrict because they are like, oh, I want to be restrictive. I think they restrict because they think that's what they need to do to lose weight. You do not need to restrict to lose weight. You need to eat in a calorie deficit to lose weight. You can eat whatever you want within those calories. Now, again, like I've said before, am I telling you to fill your 1,800 calories or 2,000 calories or 1,600 calories or 2,400 calories, how many calories you need to be eating to lose weight? Am I telling you to fill those calories with only the foods that you really, really want to eat and that are super fun, and, like donuts and takeaway and burgers and pizza and chocolate and, all those good things? No, we need to have balance, obviously. But again, I think a lot of people restrict almost out of a place of they just don't know better. Again, I grew up my whole life having absolutely no fucking idea that I could eat chocolate every single day and lose weight. Now I'm like, well, obviously, because you've got to eat in a calorie deficit. I didn't even know what a calorie deficit was until I was well into my 20s. Whereas I spent from 14 to probably 21 doing all of these fad diets and extremes and cutting things out and being super strict and fasting and all of this. Not once had I ever heard of a calorie deficit. Not once had I ever heard that you actually need to eat in a calorie deficit to lose weight. I thought I had to follow these real extreme fad diets. So again, I think when it comes to restriction, it often comes from a place, I don't want to say of uneducation, but it comes from a place of like people just don't know better. So let this be the moment, I should say, where you realize that you don't need to restrict to lose weight. You do not need to restrict to achieve your goals. You do not need to restrict to feel more confident in your body. You need to eat in a calorie deficit if you want to lose weight. And eating in a calorie deficit looks like including a balance of foods that you love and that you're craving and that you enjoy with nutritious meals that are going to nourish your body. So cutting out restriction and not allowing myself to have that restrictive mindset was a massive thing for me when it came to no longer binge eating. Number 2 is try to identify what triggers the binge. Now, for a lot of people, overeating or binge eating is emotional eating, and they overeat or they binge because they are feeling some type of heightened, generally negative emotion. So try to identify, like, when you are binging, a lot of times people say, like, oh, there's not a reason, I just do it. And that can be true in a handful of situations. But 95% of the time, I want to say, there is a reason why you're binging. You're probably just not aware what that reason is, because when you binge, it's usually something that like happens so quick. Like, I know for me, and when I speak to clients, everyone's always like, when I binge, it just kind of like comes out of nowhere and I just like don't even think about it. And before I know it, I'm in this like dark hole and I've had all this food and I feel so sick and blah, blah, blah. Try to identify what happened before that led to the binge or the overeating. So, again, for a lot of people, and I'm going to say women because I only work with women, for a lot of women, this looks like having some type of heightened negative emotion. So, this could be you're super stressed, you're upset, you're angry, you're feeling lonely, you're feeling disappointed, you're mad, you're frustrated, you're anxious. Like, those feelings can often then lead to overeating or binge eating because you are trying to soothe those emotions with food. Now, this comes down to coping mechanisms and things like that, which we'll kind of touch on soon. But I want you to, before we worry about like all of that, I want you to worry about when you are binging or overeating, what is generally happening in the moments that lead up to that, and trying to identify what, emotions or what things specifically trigger that. So that might look like for you, you might realize every time you have a really stressful day at work, you binge or you overeat. That might look like every time you have a fight with your partner and you're really upset, you binge. So most of the time it's going to be like an emotional response, I would say, from my experience and, all of my clients. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is more from a place of like restriction and you're feeling really restricted and then you're going kind of the opposite end of that. So again, there's no right or wrong here, but try to identify what happens in the lead up to the binge or the overeating, because once we can identify the trigger, then we can kind of reverse engineer from there and work backwards and go, okay, cool, what needs to change? What do we need to implement? All of those things. But we can't really do that until we understand what is triggering the binge. So I, at the beginning of my like taking my healing my relationship with food and overcoming binge eating journey seriously, like when I was like, okay, I'm not fucking around anymore. I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life. I literally had like a notes page on my phone. I'd love to say I had a journal, but my notes app is my journal. And fun fact for everyone out there that's like type A, because I am very type B, I currently have 2,635 notes in my notes app. Like, I am a notes app girl till I die. I love notes app. So you can either use a journal or you can use your notes app. It doesn't really matter. And I want you to kind of keep like a diary of when you are binging, writing down, okay, so the binge has happened. I want you to take a moment afterwards and ask yourself, like, okay, what made me want to binge? What led up to this? What happened today that maybe affected my mindset and made me overeat? I want you to start identifying. You've got to become a little bit of a detective on your own journey and figure out like what is causing this. Because again, like I said, once we can identify the trigger or the triggers, they might be multiple, then we can work backwards from there. But we need to figure out what is the trigger. So I want you to identify what is triggering you to overeat or binge eat. Number 3 is kind of continuing on. We need to find healthier coping mechanisms. This was massive for me. And whenever I have a conversation with people about healthier coping mechanisms, I always kind of like pre-warn them of like, this part of your journey is not really fun, because when you are, so the healthier coping mechanisms, again, it kind of links back to the point I just made about identifying what triggers the binge. And often what triggers the binge is an emotion, and then we're soothing the emotion or trying to make ourselves feel better with food. So the healthy coping mechanism comes in where we go, okay, I'm triggered or I'm upset or I'm angry, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, whatever it is. And that usually would trigger a binge. And instead of going to the food to soothe our emotions, we go to our list of healthier coping mechanisms and we go from there. Now, again, I always preface to people that when you have spent majority of your life soothing your emotions with food, implementing healthier coping mechanisms is going to feel so fucking annoying and you're not going to want to do it and you're going to have so much resistance towards doing it and you're going to be like, no, 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 I don't need to do this. This isn't for me because it's not fun and it's going to feel really, really hard in the moment. But the thing is, every single time you soothe your emotions with a healthier coping mechanism, it gets a little bit easier. And you have to think about how long in your life you have been soothing your emotions with food and how long you've developed that habit over. You have to give yourself some compassion that you can't just decide today that you're going to implement healthier coping mechanisms and it's going to be seamless and it's going to feel so easy and you're not going to have any problems with it. It's going to take some time. Healing your relationship with food takes time. However, if you start right now, you are going to get there so much sooner than you would if you just keep putting it off until tomorrow, next week, Monday, next year, etc. So, we need to have a list of healthier coping mechanisms that we can implement in the moments where we feel triggered, where we feel emotional, where we feel upset, angry, stressed, anxious, whatever it is. Now, I kind of always provide like a list to my clients of like, these are some options. You've got to find what works best for you. Now, I think I kind of touched on this in either the first or the second episode, but I really want to hone this in with you guys because it is so important and it was such a game changer for me on my journey. Instead of feeling stressed or anxious or upset or lonely or angry and then turning to food, I would turn to my healthier coping mechanism. So that might look like going for a walk. That might look like calling a friend. That might look like having a shower. I think, again, I touched on this, but for me, that's like my number one coping mechanism is if I'm stressed, upset, if I need to cry, if I'm angry, if I'm mad, if I'm whatever, I get in the shower. I have the water boiling hot because I love boiling myself alive in the shower. And I literally imagine and visualize myself washing the day away, washing the stress away, washing the sadness away, washing the whatever it is away. And that has been so helpful for me. For some people, that might not help at all. For me personally, I don't want to go for a walk when I'm upset. Sometimes I'll do it because it is helpful, but it's not something that makes me feel kind of comforted, whereas having a nice hot shower does. For you, it might look like, again, yoga, meditation, journaling. It might look like if you have a hobby, if you're someone that loves arts and crafts, going and doing some arts and crafts. It might look like speaking to your partner about how you're feeling and opening up with them. It might look like playing with your pet. It might look like making yourself a really nourishing, delicious home cooked meal. It might look like listening to your favorite music, listening to your favorite podcast, Thriving with Chels. It might look like watching your favorite movie and just having a really like comfy moment for yourself. So again, there's a million options out there and there's no right or wrong, but ideally like write down all of those ones and there's some good starting points. So next time you feel those heightened negative emotions, I want you to, instead of going and trying to make yourself feel better with food, look at your list and go, okay, cool. I'm going to pick some of these and I'm going to try one at a time. And over time, you're going to figure out again what works best for you and what doesn't. For me, it's the shower. For you, it might be going for a run. For you, it might be, again, doing some journaling and having a cup of tea. There's no right or wrong, but we need to start finding some healthier coping mechanisms that work for you because that is going to be such a game changer. Again, for so many women, for myself, for, I see this all the time. Binge eating and overeating often is directly linked with emotional eating. And emotional eating is what we do when we're trying to make ourselves feel better after experiencing some type of negative emotion. So instead of making yourself feel better with food, we want to make ourselves feel better with one of these healthier coping mechanisms. Because the reality is, if you also have a goal of losing weight, it is going to be incredibly difficult to lose weight if every time you feel a negative emotion, you are trying to make yourself feel better by overeating or binging. Because the reality of being a human being is you're going to have negative moments. It doesn't matter how good your life is. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be upset. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be angry. You're going to have a bad day. So if every time you feel that way, you're going and overeating, it's going to make it really hard to achieve your weight loss goals. And also, it's going to make it next to impossible to improve your relationship with food when you are using food as this thing to make yourself feel better, because we don't want to look at food in that light. Food is amazing. You're allowed to love food. I think when people talk about, oh, food is purely fuel, it's only fuel, that's how you should look at it. I think that's ridiculous. I think that that's not realistic. You're allowed to have enjoyment in food. You're allowed to love food. You're allowed to enjoy that, you get to connect with people over food and you go out for meals and you love food. You're allowed all of those things, but I don't want you to use food as this thing that fixes your problems, because the reality is it doesn't fix your problems. It just makes you feel good for the few short moments while you're actually consuming it. So that was number 3. Number 4 is including your favorite foods in your day in a portion controlled way. So for me, this looked like including chocolate in my day every single day for years and years and years. So again, going back to point 1 where I said you've got to stop restricting, I needed to stop restricting. I needed to stop cutting out food groups entirely, cutting out certain foods entirely. I needed to stop doing the extreme fad diets. And I actually needed to include the foods that I loved every day, because the reality is, like I said, when you restrict, it often leads to overeating. So when I told myself, you're not allowed to have chocolate, you're not allowed to have chocolate, you're on a diet, you're not allowed to have chocolate, you're trying to lose weight, so you're not allowed to have chocolate, eventually I would give in and then I would eat 2 family-sized blocks of chocolate at a time. Whereas now I know that I can eat chocolate every single day and I can achieve my weight loss goals, because I've lost over 25 kilos. I've healed my relationship with food and I eat chocolate every single day. Last night I had my Lindt chocolate. I had a little strawberry Freddo frog. I love chocolate. I have it all the time. Every single day I eat it. However, you've got to have it in a portion controlled way. Now, when you're starting your journey, again, this is going to be difficult, because if you're used to eating a family-sized block of Cadbury chocolate every time you have chocolate, you're going to want to eat that much chocolate every single time. So with this and with everything I'm saying here, it's not something that you get to just decide you're going to do, and the first time you do it, it's done, easy peasy, like you're never going to struggle again. It takes time. It takes trial and error. It's going to take times where you tell yourself you're going to have 2 fun-sized chocolates and you eat the whole bag. It's going to happen. It's all part of the process. Hear me when I say it's all part of the process. But learning to include your favorite food in your day in a portion-controlled way is going to do wonders for your relationship with food, because you're no longer going to look at that food as this special occasion thing or this off limits thing, and it really does take the power away from that food. So again, I'm just going to keep using the example of chocolate because that's my thing. But for me, any time in the past I was restrictive and I wasn't allowing myself to eat chocolate, then if I was in a situation where chocolate was there or available to me, I would overeat it and I would overindulge and I'd binge and all of these things, and then it would be back to the restriction. Whereas now I know I can have the chocolate every single day in a portion controlled way, and I can not only achieve my weight loss goals, but I can have a really good relationship with food, because knowing in my mind that I am going to have my chocolate tonight, I'm going to have my chocolate tomorrow night, and I'm going to have my chocolate every single night for the rest of my life after that, it takes the power away from this being this special occasion treat food. Because when you look at the foods in that special occasion, oh, this is naughty, this is just a treat, I'm only allowed to have this sometimes, it makes you want it more. Now, again, I'm not saying you're going to be able to eat a large Zinger box every single day. That's a little bit different, but you absolutely can have some type of delicious chicken or a homemade, chip or something like that every single day. It's going to look different for everyone. But if you love chocolate, if you love ice cream, if you love lollies, if you love potato chips, if you love a cake or something like that, if that's kind of the foods that you love, you can absolutely include those in a portion controlled way every single day and achieve your goals. It's just going to take a little bit of time. I often post videos on my Instagram about my chocolate jar method, and that basically is the 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 method behind it is that I have a huge jar of individually wrapped fun-sized chocolates in my pantry at all times. And having that there is such a beautiful reminder, honestly. Every day when I see it in my pantry, it's like front and center in my pantry. It's like the masterpiece of my pantry. It's such a beautiful reminder to me of how far I've come with my relationship with food because there is no way in hell, even 2 years ago, I could have that in my pantry. If I had that in my pantry 2 years ago and I had a really stressful day at work, I would come home and I would polish off every single last bit of that chocolate. So now seeing that is such a good reminder of how far I've come. But the method behind it is that having something like a chocolate jar for me is a visual representation of like, you can have this food in the house and you can eat this food every single day and you can also achieve your goals. It doesn't need to be this special off limits thing. You can have it every single day, but it really does come down to portion control. And now, again, in the beginning, practicing portion control, if you're used to eating much larger servings or overeating these foods, is going to feel hard, but it is possible. Trust me, when I say I used to eat two family sized blocks of Cadbury chocolate, I'm not being dramatic. I'm a dramatic person, but I'm not being dramatic. I'm being as honest as someone can be. Now, instead of having two family size blocks of chocolate every single day, I have two, sometimes three fun sized chocolates every single day. And I feel just as satisfied. But it's taken a long time to get to this point. But having the chocolate jar there and reminding myself you can have this every single day has been a game changer for me. So again, I really want you to kind of pick one food. Again, it might be chocolate, it might be lollies, potato chips, ice cream, whatever your thing is, and include a portion controlled amount of that in your day every single day and watch how the power from that food gets taken away from it because it's no longer this like off limits naughty thing that we're not allowed to have. It just becomes chocolate. It just becomes ice cream. It just becomes part of your day. Yes, do I look forward to my chocolate every single day? Absolutely. I can't wait to eat my fun-sized chocolates tonight on the couch while I'm watching whatever I'm watching, but I'm not constantly thinking about it. It doesn't hold this like weight over me like food, specifically the foods that I love, like chocolate, did in the past. Next up is I keep locking my phone because I know I'm going to like go on in between, but then it like takes me a second. So next one is, this is number 5, is you need to allow yourself to be flexible with your meals. And this was massive for me. I think that again, it's kind of similar to the conversation of restriction where when I used to do these extreme fad, super strict diets, there was no room for flexibility. It was like you eat one boiled egg, one apple for breakfast. You eat one piece of bread, and like it was like so strict. These are the rules. This is exactly what you need to follow. There's no room for meals out. There's no room for any type of flexibility. It doesn't matter what you feel like. You stick to the plan and that's it. For me, flexibility has been a game changer because the reality is if I wake up today and I need to eat salmon for lunch and I don't want to fucking eat salmon, forcing myself to eat salmon is going to leave me feeling unsatisfied. And something I've identified in myself is when I'm left feeling unsatisfied after a meal, that in the past would trigger a binge. So I don't want to force myself to eat something that I know is going to leave me feeling unsatisfied. So this is where flexibility is massive because if I don't feel like salmon, I don't have to eat the salmon. I can swap it out for, oh, I might have chicken instead, or I'll have steak or whatever. And then I'm satisfied and then I can move on with my day. So flexibility is massive. And obviously my style of nutrition coaching is what you would call like flexible dieting, where you're tracking your calories. You can eat what you want within your calories. Obviously there's daily habits we want to tick. We want to be mindful of our protein, our fruits, our veggies, all of those things as well. But it's very flexible. It's very much built around what you like, your preferences, your cravings. If you want to eat pizza every single night for dinner, you can absolutely eat pizza every night for dinner. Because if that's going to leave you feeling satisfied, you are so much less likely to overeat than you are if you're force feeding yourself a dry bowl of dry boiled chicken breast, the tiniest portion of white rice, and like 500 grams of steamed stinky broccoli. You need to be enjoying the meals you're eating and you need to have flexibility. And that is like basically what my style of coaching and what Thrive is all about. But for me, this was a game changer because it allowed me to have this kind of in between where it wasn't like, well, if I don't want to eat the salmon for lunch, then I'm going to go drive through KFC and binge eat KFC in my car. It was like, okay, well, if I don't want the salmon, I'm going to have chicken instead. And then I'm going to be consistent with my calories because at least I'm sticking to my calories, but I'm having something that I actually feel like. So I think having that flexibility is massive. And flexibility can be really hard for a lot of people that struggle with things like binge eating or overeating because generally, when you struggle with those things, you have a very all or nothing mindset, which if you haven't listened to episode 2 where I spoke about kind of like why you keep starting over every Monday, listen to that because that a huge conversation in that was about like all or nothing mindset. But when you are somebody that struggles with an all or nothing mindset, you often are very black or white. You're either all in or you're all out. So flexibility is kind of like, well, no, I can't be flexible. I can't have like, that in between gray area. It's like, no, I'm either in or I'm out. Learning to be flexible and learning to allow yourself to make changes and to change things up and to, again, if it's spontaneous dinner comes up and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to not have my meal prep, but I'm going to go out for dinner instead. So I'm going to move my lunch around to make it a little low in calories and blah, blah. Learning how to be flexible is massive and was such a massive thing for me when it came to overcoming binge eating. And I have a feeling it would be for you too. And if you're listening to this, obviously that was the first 5 points. I have 5 more that I'm going to speak to, and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Please go back to what I said. You do not need to, and you should not make all of these changes overnight. You shouldn't be like, okay, I'm going to start doing all 10 of these things right now, because again, that's going to leave you feeling overwhelmed. And we know when we feel overwhelmed, we're likely to just be like, well, this is all too hard. I'm not doing any of it. So pick one thing. Implement that, then add on the next, build from there. That is how you're going to make these changes. And that is how you're going to overcome binge eating sustainably. And for me, I did not do all these things overnight. Again, I started with no longer restricting. I was like, okay, I'm no longer restricting. I'm not doing fad diets. I'm not doing any of that anymore. And then I went into identifying, wait, what's actually triggering these binges? Let me work that way. And then I went into, okay, cool. I noticed it was certain emotions. And then I was like, all right, I need healthier coping mechanisms to deal with these emotions. Like this work was done over like at least 18-month period for me. So I don't expect you and I don't want you to try do it all at once because that is overwhelming. Like, yes, I know being like told do this and it's going to fix your problems. It's like, well, I'm going to do it all straight away. It's not going to fix your problems if you try to do it all straight away and all at once. Pick one thing, nail that, and then build from there. Let's get into the sixth thing, that's hard to say, that helped me overcome binge eating. Where am I? Okay. Opening up to someone in your life. Now, this one's a little bit rogue, but I have to share it because I do think it's massive and I think it's something that so many people overlook. So for me, I had to open up to somebody in my life about what I was experiencing and how I was feeling. And I think that you need to do this as well. Because when you are struggling with overeating and binge eating, often you feel a lot of shame around those things. And that is why people binge eat in secret and they hide the wrappers and they do it in their car and they don't tell anyone about it. It's like this big secret that you're like, oh, I'm never going to tell anyone about that. But the reality is when you don't tell anyone about it, you have no one to support you. Now, yes, you can get the support from like a professional and you should get the support from a professional, but I think there is something so beautiful about letting someone in your real life, generally the person that's like closest proximity to you. So if you live with your partner, whether it's like your boyfriend, your husband, whoever, I would say them. If it's, your best friend, if it's your parent, like someone who is like really, really close to you, opening up to them about what you're experiencing and asking them to support you. This was such a pivotal moment in my journey when I finally opened up to my fiance, which I hate saying fiance, but I'm going to say fiance, my fiance, Dan, about what I was experiencing and how much I was struggling. Because the thing is, how was he supposed to help me? How was he supposed to be the partner that I wanted him to be, which was someone that was able to support me if I wasn't letting him in on what I was struggling with? And I definitely am like I'll deal with it on my own person. I'm very much like, "Ugh, I don't need help from anyone. I'll figure it all out." And I've really had to unlearn that. And I still am unlearning that, to be honest. Like, I'm very independent. I'll figure it all out. I don't want to inconvenience anyone. I don't want to talk about it with anyone. Like, I'll just figure it out. Again, I think a lot of you will relate to this because I think a lot of people who struggle with binge eating feel this way. But for me, opening up to Dan and letting him just like see me as I was massive, and admitting to him like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm binge eating every single day and I'm really struggling. And, I feel really bad that I haven't been honest with you about it. And I think, again, with binge eating, you feel shame about the, the actual binge eating side of it. But then I know for myself as well, I felt a lot of shame about the dishonesty around it. I don't want to be the type of person that lies to my partner. But I was not being honest about, my food habits and my relationship with food and all of these things. And like that felt awful. So not only was I physically and mentally feeling shit from binging, I was also feeling physically and mentally shit because I'm not being honest with the person who I'm probably most supposed to be the most honest with. So I really encourage you to open up to one person in your life, and obviously like pick this person based on who you think is going to be able to kind of like support you. Now, again, I had plenty of people that would be able to. I know I could speak to Dan about, I knew I could speak to my best friend about, I knew I could speak to my mum about it. Like, I knew I had people that I could speak to about it and that could support me through it. Ultimately, I live with Dan. He is my life partner and we are together the most. So it made the most sense for me to kind of let him be that person on my journey. And I'm so glad I did. And also just understanding that like they're not necessarily going to fully understand it. I think I know people don't like when you call like binge eating, or you don't when you call like food, like people don't like to call food addiction is a thing, but I 100% think it is. I think the way I was with food was very, 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 very similar to how addicts are with other things. Like, I obviously, having a food addiction is nowhere near as extreme or potentially harmful in most cases as a drug or alcohol addiction, or, a gambling addiction or whatever it is. But I was very much an addict. Like, I had very addict like behaviors. Again, the secrecy, the shame, all of these things. My mood, I was so like, I was a different person, whether I was allowing if I was overeating and I was like getting kind of like my fix, which again, I don't know if I should even be saying these things. I don't know if this is like politically correct or whatever, but uh, I want to be honest because I want to be able to share and like help you guys. But for me, if I was getting my fix with food, I was like way happier for the most part. And then I would have like those obviously really low moments when all I wanted was to overeat, but I wasn't like able to, I wasn't, it wasn't available to me or whatever. Like, I was very, very much like my mood was so dependent on food. And like, when I look back, I'm like, oh, I despise that version of myself. Like, who is that? Like, I don't know that version of myself anymore. But anyway, one, you've got to like choose your person who's someone that is going to kind of like be able to support you, but they don't need to understand it. Like, again, Dan doesn't really understand having a negative relationship with food because he doesn't have one. Like, he has the most neutral relationship with food out of anyone I've ever met. He loves food, but he doesn't have any like negative relationship, disordered habits, anything like that. So he doesn't necessarily understand what I'm going through, but he's able to support me and he's able to, check in on me and just be like, oh, how are you going recently, or how are you going at the moment with food? And, opens up like an opportunity for me to have those conversations. And this is kind of off topic, but again, I think even like bring this more to like a weight loss conversation. Often people don't even want to tell their partners that they want to lose weight and that they're going on a weight loss journey, and then they get frustrated that their partner's not supporting them on their journey. And it's like, well, you haven't told them. And I always have clients say to me like, oh, my partner, like, he always brings me home like a chocolate bar when he fills up the car with petrol, and like, like, I know he's being nice, but like, I'm trying to lose weight. And I'm like, have you told him that you are trying to lose weight and that you would prefer he didn't bring you home a chocolate bar every single time he goes to the shops? And they're like, no. I'm like, let's start there. Like, be honest. And I know it can feel really hard, again, as somebody who had so much shame and I was embarrassed and all of these things. My life and like the weight that was lifted off my shoulders when I just let one person in and allowed them to support me. And again, like, Dan's not a nutritionist, he's not a psychologist, he couldn't fix my problems, but just having someone who was aware of what I was struggling with, especially the person that you spend the most time with and that you live with, was a game changer. And he was able to just check in on me every now and again. And I was able to kind of be a little bit more open with how I was feeling. If I was having a day where I wanted to binge, I would say to him, like, hey, I really want to binge right now. And he would be like, okay, well, like, we're not going to do that. So maybe let's go for a walk. And although, like, he doesn't have the answers, being able to, like, have someone to support you on this journey, I think is really, really important. So I really do. I know it's going to be scary. And I remember when someone told me that, like, you should do this, you should open up to somebody, having so much resistance and being like, no, there has to be another thing I can do instead. Um, and there is, but I do think that, like, you are going to feel so much better physically, you're going to feel so much better mentally. It's going to help your relationships. Like, I just think it is part of the process of overcoming overeating or improving your relationship with food. I think you have to let at least one person in your life aware of what you're struggling with. So I know that one's going to feel scary to do, but trust me when I say it's a game changer. Okay, the next one, we're change of pace here. We're kind of lightening the mood a little bit. Number 7 is making sure that you are including meals that actually satisfy your cravings in your day. So again, it kind of goes back to the conversation of not restricting and being flexible. But for me, and a lot of coaches and people online kind of will shit on this. And I think everyone's allowed their own opinion. We live in I don't know, a free world. You're allowed, I mean, at least in Australia, we are very lucky to have freedom of speech and you're allowed to have your own opinions. A lot of people will shit on, like, if your coach is telling you to eat tacos and burgers for dinner, then, they don't care about your health because that's not the most nutritionally optimal meal. Okay, cool. But guess what? Guess what? Me having a homemade burger for dinner is often going to be the thing that stops me from binge eating. So it is the healthier option. It is way healthier for me to have the homemade cheeseburger for dinner than to have the salmon poke bowl with a million veggies and it's so rich in all the nutrients and all of the things, because that's going to leave me feeling unsatisfied. And like I said before, for a lot of people, feeling unsatisfied is going to trigger a binge or trigger overeating. And this is where I think, I try to not play, like, as a nutrition coach and someone who works in, like, an online industry, I really, for the most part, try to not, like, demonize a lot of other people's approaches. Like, of course, there's things that I'm against and I do share those things, but I try not to go too hard on it because I think, like, everyone's journey is so different and everyone needs different things. And I think if you're somebody that struggles with overeating and you have a negative relationship with food and generally you're going to need to eat some more fun foods. If you're somebody who wants to lose weight but you're addicted to takeaway, you're probably going to need to include homemade burgers and homemade pizza and delicious meals like that in your diet so you don't go and binge eat the takeaway. Like, I think everyone's at different stages and there's no right or wrong in my opinion. I think there's only right, like, it depends on the person. And for me personally, and for the thousands and thousands of women that I have coached over the years, allowing yourself to eat the foods that are going to satisfy your cravings is going to help you stop overeating. Because again, if you tell yourself, oh no, I shouldn't have the homemade cheeseburger for dinner because that's not as nutritious for me as the salmon poke bowl, and you have the salmon poke bowl and then you're like, oh, this kind of tastes like shit, and now I'm not satisfied and I'm still craving the burger, and then you drive through Macca's and you get a triple cheeseburger meal, what's the better option? The better option probably was to make the homemade cheeseburger, eat the cheeseburger, feel satisfied and be done with it. So again, I think making sure, if you're somebody who struggles with overeating or binging, making sure that you're including the foods that you love in your diet. Now, again, obviously we need to make sure we are looking after our body and we are nourishing our body and we're eating our protein, we're eating our fruits, we're eating our veggies, we're doing all of those things, obviously. But I think we can't expect ourselves to have this, like, perfect, clean, anti-inflammatory, whole foods focused, plant-based diet, because guess what? That's not going to work. It's not going to stick. The reason I've been able to stay consistent with my nutrition for the last year and a half is because I eat foods that I love. Last night I had grilled for dinner. The night before, Dan and I made homemade cheeseburgers for dinner. But guess what? I also eat nutrient dense meals as well and snacks. So I think, again, you need to not do what works best for other people, and you don't need to always follow what everyone on Instagram is telling you to do, because again, they only know what's right for their experience and their clients. They're the people they work with. The people I work with are the people who have previously struggled with overeating, previously struggled with binge eating, who have been addicted to food, addicted to takeaway. Me saying you need to eat chicken, rice, and broccoli for dinner, it's probably not going to work, and it's probably not going to help them improve their relationship with food. So, again, making sure you're including meals that satisfy your cravings in your diet or in your day is going to be massive when it comes to reducing the amount of overeating or binge eating. Because, again, if you are craving a cheeseburger and you tell yourself, no, no, I'm not allowed to have a cheeseburger because that's bad for me, which is restriction, you're restricting yourself. And then you eat the salmon poke bowl. I don't know why that's my choice. I love a salmon poke bowl. Sorry to the salmon poke bowls for making you my victim here. But if you eat the salmon poke bowl instead because you're like, well, no, that's the healthier option, and then you're unsatisfied, and then you're like, well, no, now I still want the cheeseburger because that's what I originally wanted, and then you're overeating Macca's and having, a triple cheeseburger and all of these extras, and then you go into that all or nothing mindset, and then you've had 5,000 calories. The homemade cheeseburger in the beginning was the healthier option because it didn't lead to the binge. So again, there's no right or wrong in any of this. Like nutrition and health and all of these things, it's so person dependent. But I think if you're somebody that struggles with overeating or binge eating, food addiction, has a negative relationship with food, who has previously been really restrictive, like I'm going to tell you to eat the homemade cheeseburger over the salmon poke bowl. Sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry at all. I'm not going to apologize. Okay, number 8. We've got 3 more. Number 8, I wrote down, you need to learn how to take a second. So when I say like take a second, like I mentioned before, binge eating, it's often something that happens very quickly. You have the urge to binge and you go and do it. There's not really like an in the between moment where you're like, I feel like binge eating. Am I gonna go do that today? Let me look at the time. Let me look at my schedule. Like it's like you get the urge and you're doing it before you even know. And that's where so many people, they are then like, oh my God, Chelsea, I don't even know what happened. Like I had a bad day at work, and then I got home, and then I ate everything in the pantry, and like I literally like, what even happened? So something I really encourage you to do, and something that I had to do for so long, and I still have moments where I do this, is learn how to take a fucking second. Learn how to take a breath. Learn how to implement a circuit breaker, if you will. So basically what this is going to look like is when you have the click in your brain that makes you want to binge or overeat, sit down, take a deep breath, and say to yourself like, okay, Chelsea, take a second. Like I always say, like, Chelsea, take a second. Is going and binging right now going to fix the problem or the negative emotions that you're feeling? No, we know it's not going to. Okay, cool. It's not going to fix my problems. Is going and overeating right now, does that align with my goals? No, it doesn't align with my goals, especially when my goals are improve my relationship with food and lose weight. Overeating does not align with that. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Ask myself, okay, what's something I could do right now that isn't overeating that could maybe make myself feel better? Again, going back to our healthier coping mechanisms, having a hot shower, making myself a cup of tea, listening to a podcast, going for a walk, whatever it is for you, journaling, talking to a friend, whatever it is. Okay, cool. You've taken a second, you've asked yourself a couple of questions, you kind of are feeling a little bit more like grounded, and you've come back to earth a little bit. You're feeling a little bit more in your body instead of just, again, that outer body feeling you often get when you binge, where you're like, how did that even happen? You feel more in your body, and then you can make decisions from there. This is hard because, again, when you get those urges to binge, like I'm clicking my fingers because that feels like the best way to describe how it feels. It's like this like click moment and it just happens. Learning how to implement something in your head when you feel that click and stop take a second, ask yourself a couple of questions and come up with a better game plan or strategy or whatever you want to call it, it's massive and it's hard. It's not easy, trust me, but this is probably one of the top things I find that really, really helps my clients. And it's about forming a new habit of when you get those urges, instead of the habit that you've developed over years and years where you go and act on it instantly, you take a second. We're building a new habit. Okay, the new habit is when I want to binge or I want to overeat or I want to throw in the towel on my goals, I take a second. I take a deep breath. You might even have a sip of water. Whoa, crazy thought. And you ask yourself those questions. Is going and eating right now going to fix my problems or make me feel better? Again, we know, yes, it might make you feel better for the 5 seconds you're eating it. Long term, it's not. So the answer is no. Okay, cool. The next question is, does this align with my goals? Is going and overeating right now, does that align with my goals? For most people, doesn't even really matter what your goals are. The answer is probably no. And then lastly, what is something I can do instead that is going to make me feel a little bit better? So obviously we have our healthier coping mechanisms, but then I also would encourage you to look at kind of like the root cause of the trigger. So again, this is like, I feel like it gets a little bit complicated. I wish I had like a whiteboard that I could write this on for you. But for example, okay, cool. So say you've had a fight with your partner and that's made you feel really upset. And then the feeling really upset is what is triggering you to want to overeat, because you're upset. You want to make yourself feel better. You want to do that with food because that's what you've done your whole life. Okay, cool. Instead of like even having the healthier coping mechanism conversation, like let's take a step backwards and look at the root cause, I guess, which is like the fight with your partner. Okay, cool. Do we need to learn how to have better communication? Do we need to maybe have a different partner? Do we need to break up? Do we need to go to couples therapy? Like trying to also look at the root cause. Yes, we need to have healthier coping mechanisms because, as I said before, we're human beings. Life is hard. We're going to have shit moments. We need to learn how to deal with that. However, I think also looking at the root cause, if you're having fights with your partner 3 times a week, which is causing you to be so upset, and then you're trying to make yourself feel better by eating food, the root problem is what we need to focus on as well. Yes, the healthier coping mechanisms, but also the problem of your relationship. Again, if you're someone that is really, really, really like chronically stressed at your job and that causes you to overeat and binge, maybe we need to look at your job. Is there something you can do to reduce your stress levels at your work? Do you need to speak to your boss? Do you need to, again, like change your role? Do you need to find a new job? Like, again, like, yes, healthier coping mechanisms are massive, but like bonus points if you can also look at kind of the root cause of the negative emotions. There's a lot of information in this episode, so I hope you guys are enjoying it, and I hope it's not feeling like too overwhelming or anything like that. Okay, we have 2 more. Next, focus on one thing at a time. Trying to do it all is going to cause overwhelm. So again, these are like my very rough notes, but what I mean by this is focus on one thing at a time. Okay, cool. If you want to overcome binge eating and you want to stop binge eating, you want to stop overeating, you want to improve your relationship with food, when I say focus on one thing at a time, not only am I referring to this list of 10 things, I'm also referring to like your habits with food. Again, this goes back to a conversation we had in episode 2 about the all or nothing mindset. You don't need to do everything. You don't need to wake up tomorrow and be like, okay, cool, I'm going to be perfect with my food and I'm going to tick all these boxes, and I'm also going to start running, and I'm also going to start going to the gym, and I'm also going to, do all of these things, and I'm going to start a new hobby, and I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Like, that's overwhelm. And again, overwhelm can often cause and trigger a binge because it's like, oh my God, there's too much going on. I'm trying to do too many things. And then you're like, well, I can't do it all, so I'm just going to do none of it, and I'm going to go completely backwards into my old habits, which is binging, overeating, etc. So with your journey, doesn't matter what your goal is. If your goal is to lose weight, if your goal is to improve your relationship with food, if your goal is to just eat better, if your goal is to whatever, try to pick one thing at a time to focus on. Because again, when we try to do too much, it causes overwhelm. So pick one thing at a time. Once you're feeling better with that, then we build from there. Again, I know how tempting it can be to like wake up and feel really motivated and be like, I'm going to change my entire life. And like, I love that idea. And trust me, I've tried to do that a million times, but it almost always leads to me feeling overwhelmed and it being not sustainable. and then falling completely back in the deep end of my negative old habits. So focusing on one thing at a time and remembering that like healing your relationship with food and achieving your goals, it's not something that happens overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take, I would say, minimum 6 to 12 months to improve your relationship with food. It's going to take at least 18 months, I would say, to completely heal your relationship with food. And even completely, I think, like, is it ever completely healed? I would say it's like, I would say, like, my relationship with food right now is like 99% healed, but I'm sure there's still 1% of me that, like, will have some minor struggles for the rest of my life. And that's okay. So it takes time. Even with losing weight, people often like, okay, Chelsea, I want to lose 10 kilos. Is that possible in 4 weeks? I'm like, no, babe. Unfortunately, it's not, because think about how long it took you to gain those 10 kilos. You probably gained those 10 kilos over a couple of years minimum. Okay, cool. It doesn't need to take a couple of years to lose them. Trust me, we don't need to take that long, but it's not going to happen in 4 weeks. It's not going to happen overnight. Same thing with making better habits or forming better habits or improving your relationship with food. All of these things, it takes time. So pick one thing at a time, focus on nailing that thing or getting really solid with that thing, and then we build from there. Okay, lucky last. Now, unfortunately, number 10 is something that I wasn't able to do. And at the time, it was frustrating for me, but now I'm able to recommend it to you all, and I'm able to kind of be that person for you. Is I think you need to get support from someone who understands it and someone who's been through it. Again, I have worked with a lot of coaches over the years, like as a client and having my own nutrition coaches. And although they were incredible, they were caring, they were lovely, they were educated, they had their own personal lived experiences, they were great coaches. Of course, there's a couple of not so great ones in there, but for the most part, they were incredible. I've never worked with a coach who truly understood the depths of what I was struggling with. And I think that was an issue because they didn't know how to coach me through what I was really struggling with because they hadn't experienced it to my level. So, although I wasn't able to get support from someone who truly understood it, I recommend doing that yourself, whether that's me, which is what I would recommend, obviously, or if it's somebody else. I think trying to find someone who actually has been through what you are going through, someone who has overcome the things you want to overcome, because they are going to be able to give you the best advice. And as a nutrition coach, obviously, I am qualified, I am educated, I've done the study that I need to do, I'm constantly up leveling my knowledge. But my most impactful coaching isn't what comes from the textbook. It comes from my personal experience. So I think finding a coach who has been through what you are going through and has overcome and struggled with what you want to overcome and what you're currently struggling with is a game changer. And if you want to overcome overeating, if you want to stop binge eating, if you want to improve your relationship with food, find someone to support you who has been through similar things. So if you've listened to this episode, I think this has been a long one. The timer thing's behind me, so I don't want to turn around and look because I don't want to look away from you guys. But this has been a long one. If you've gone through this and you're like, whoa, Chelsea is like in my brain and I so connect with all of this and it's like she's speaking directly to me, that's probably a pretty good sign that I am the coach for you because I get you. I am you. I've been you, babe. Like, we are one. So if that's you and you're listening to this, send me a DM on Instagram at chels.civil and like, let's keep this going. Let me help you because I know how hard this journey is. I know how incredibly difficult improving your relationship with food and stopping overeating and overcoming binge eating and all of these things. I know how hard it is because I've done it and I've done it multiple times and I've fucked up and now I've done it again. Now I'm like, wait, okay, I've actually done it this time and I feel really solid and I've been able to maintain that. Like I I know how hard it is. And again, like if you connect to all this kind of like minor things I've mentioned in this episode around like, the shame you can feel with binge eating and the feeling like embarrassed and even the points around feeling like it just happens like this and you're so out of your body, like all of those small things I've mentioned, if you really connect to that, let that be your sign that I'm probably the coach for you because as I said, I have been you. I am you. We are one. And for me, I wish little Chelsea a few years ago had this version of me as a coach, because I would have been able to change her life. And I was able to change her life. And now I get to help you guys change your lives. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode. This, like, sitting here right now, I'm like, oh, we're on episode 5 and this feels like my favorite episode ever. Like, I love this. And I could go on and I have so much to share. And every single point I could talk about for an hour. But I hope you have loved this episode. If you have, like I said at the beginning of the episode, please rate the podcast 5 stars. Please follow the podcast. Please turn on the little notifications and send me a DM on Instagram. Like, I love having conversations with you guys. I feel like people who listen to the podcast, you guys are like my ride or dies. I have so much time for you. I want to talk to you. I want to chat with you. I want to help you. Message me on Instagram. Let's chat. I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and I will speak to you all in the next one. Bye, my loves.